Toyota Material Handling is now providing a factory rebate of up to $2,500 when you trade in a Toyota or a competitive unit. Now, through September 30th, 2024, trade in your forklift and get a new industry-leading Toyota forklift. This rebate applies to electric and internal combustion models. Unlock your upgrade today by visiting toyotaforklift.com. That's toyotaforklift.com, or click the link in the show notes.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Sam Hollenbach, and he is the CEO and president at AMP Health. And AMP Health is focused on the industrial athlete. So those workers in the warehouse that we love, and they're focused on protecting them, preventing injury and safety. And we're going to dive a little further into AMP Health, what they're all about, rebrand that they've recently gone through. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Sam's background too, because he actually was a professional athlete and now he's helping industrial athletes. So we're going to hear a little bit how that all ties together. So Sam, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm excited to be here.
Definitely. Happy to get you on. Happy to talk about this. I'm always excited to talk about worker safety and health. I think it's one of the most important, if not the most important thing about the workplace, especially in the warehouse and industrial spaces. So pleasure to have you on, and definitely interested to hear about your background too. But before we dive in, and for people maybe that are just getting familiar with AMP Health or haven't heard of you before, why don't you give us kind of a brief overview of what it is that you all do?
Sure. AMP Health is a software company. We focus on injury prevention and management for industrial workforces. So anywhere where there is physical labor being performed and there are, injuries that are sort of occurring within those workforces, and that's spans the economy, or, as you know, spans into several areas of the economy, several different sectors. We focus specifically on musculoskeletal injuries and on the prevention of those injuries, and also on the sort of the management of complaints when workers are sort of feeling like they're sore. How does a customer, who in our eyes is someone who cares about that workforce, how does a customer track those complaints? How does a customer sort of track the trends around, when and where and how some of those complaints might be surfacing? And how can you use that information to better, again, proactively manage against sort of those catastrophic outcomes where somebody's actually getting hurt and losing time?
Yeah. And super important things to be doing there, especially, I think it's one thing to recognize when someone is injured or is going through some type of injury, especially the ones that you mentioned, the musculoskeletal, which are sometimes hard to see coming on or detect unless they're vocalized by the worker. But, that tracking portion too is super important as well. And sometimes is challenging to do. So I'm very interested to kind of dive into how the tech that you guys are putting out there and the software is going to help with that. But before we kind of dive into those details, I'm very curious to hear a little bit about your background, because you recently joined AMP Health as a CEO and president as well. So congratulations on that first, I'll say. But your background, you started as a professional athlete. You were a quarterback for a little while, right? And then you also worked for Under Armour for a while too. So very involved from an athletic standpoint, you could say, in both roles, right? So I'm curious, how is kind of that experience of being a professional athlete now, how is that kind of coming over and translating to applying this to the industrial athletes now, and why was this such an interesting role for you to take on and exciting for you?
Yeah, I have really developed this passion for the health tech space and have built a career in health tech, in building different kinds of products across hardware, software, firmware, algorithms for Under Armour, and then for Amazon, and now for AMP Health. And a big part of why I have developed this passion is my experience as an athlete. As you mentioned, I grew up playing sports, grew up very focused on sports, and was fortunate enough to grow, I guess, big and strong enough to, have a shot to play football at a high level. I played football at the University of Maryland. In the sport of football specifically, like, you need to be big and strong enough to be able to play at a high level. So there's some things that just are outside of your control that have to, fall into place to even have that chance. So I was blessed to kind of have the physical size to play, and then got a chance to play with Washington Redskins, which was a dream come true. It was really exciting to be a part of that team. And I realized as I advanced, into college, into professional, just how important it was to be present, to be productive. You really let your team down if you were hurt. You really, that was a big blow to the team. If you couldn't show up for practice, let alone a game, like, that hurts the team. And I got a firsthand view on the types of technologies that, we would use, that our training staff, our sports scientists would bring to the locker room, to the weight room, to the field, to help us improve. And a lot of that technology was focused on, I guess it could be divided. There's the sport focus, there's helping you improve at your position. And then there's just the sort of the health focus of just either getting you back from an injury faster, or helping prevent that injury from occurring in the first place. And, having that firsthand view of the efforts, the science that went into just keeping people on the field and helping them perform at a high level really sparked my interest in what turned out to be sort of this post football career in health tech. And so I really have developed this interest in the applications of technology and just keeping people on the production floor, right? Or sort of producing, rather. A lot of the work that I had done, in previous stops in my career was on a consumer, was for a consumer, end consumer focus, right? So Under Armour builds products for an end consumer, an athlete in mind there. And when I was working at Amazon, it was the same thing. Amazon had a business called Halo. Halo was a Fitbit competitor. Yeah. So an end consumer in mind, health focus. Now I'm focused on this industrial athlete, but really it's all the same, right? Everybody is human, whether you're a professional athlete or whether you work, on a production floor for a distribution warehouse. And what explains your health, what explains your ability to show up for work each day and do your job, a lot of those factors are the same, right? It's, there's things like sleep, nutrition, there's your mental health, there's sort of your activity level. A lot of these factors come together the same, no matter what your application, what your job is. And so I saw a really interesting opportunity as I was, looking at joining the AMP Health team to leverage some of the insights that I had developed over the past working for an end consumer or an athlete, and applying them to, the industrial athlete that we're looking at now at AMP Health.
Yeah, very interesting. And I love that, you take a look at all those things that, like you said, are going into play to, I guess, keep the player on the field, so to speak, right? And, to keep things moving forward as a team and as a all-encompassing, unit, right? Each player on that team is a part of what you need to accomplish, not only during, I guess, game day, but also during practice and all the preparation that goes into that as well. But it's very similar to, you look at a team in the warehouse as well. If someone's injured and, they can't come to work and now you're short one person, or maybe it's multiple people or call out sick, whatever the case may be, then you're certainly at a detriment for the day to hit your productivity levels and have the throughput that you need to really deliver to your customer at the end of the day, which I guess you could say is kind of winning the game, I guess, in a sense, right? Like getting that order out when it's supposed to go out, no damages, on time, all those types of things, right? So I think it's very interesting how you translate that over and how you've found this passion for now on the industrial, I guess, athlete side off the field, right? I think, which is pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about the software and kind of the tech side that Amp Health is bringing to this, because I'm curious, like, how does the tech kind of come into play to help with that injury prevention and overall kind of safety in the warehouse as well?
Yeah. So the technology, we have a few different components to our solution. Mm-hmm. One of the big ones is a computer vision application that assesses the way that an employee would move and then correlates that to injury risk. So this is one of the most exciting areas of our technology, in my opinion. That we have an app. It leverages the camera that you'd have on your iPhone. A supervisor, a frontline manager, an HR person, really anybody could use this app to videotape an employee moving. We have a set of a few different movements that are pretty easy to explain, and we sort of explain all this in the app as well. What movement you should do, and then the employee goes through that movement, and then we have a set of algorithms that are calculating the quality of that movement, and they are correlating the overall movement to an injury risk. And that injury risk is shown across 5 different body parts. It's your ankles, it's your knees, your hips, your back, and your shoulders. And so you're getting this injury risk score. And there's some scientific validation for the correlation of the movement to the injury risk score. There's things like symmetry that we bring into it. So looking at asymmetries across something like a squat in how your knees sort of move, right? Like that is one of the factors that we bring into our calculation that then factors into the score you would get. There's also a resiliency score as well that sort of gives the customer or whoever's looking at this data the ability to understand a sense for sort of how resilient this particular employee would be. And then you can take that information, you can correlate that to different kinds of jobs that you have at your facility, right? So one of the outputs of this computer vision assessment is, and it's a functional movement assessment, is how likely are you to be hurt in a job that would have lower body sort of physical demands versus upper body physical demands. And that gives you the sense, that you might need to determine where you would place that employee, what kind of job they would be sort of best positioned for from an injury risk perspective. So that's a really important part of our technology. That's an area, this computer vision area is one that we're really leaning into. And it's also one of the reasons it's exciting is it's not necessarily new. The idea of computer vision is not new. It's been around a long time, but there's a few different tech factors that are coming together that make this a more viable product and a better experience for the end customer. Things like higher resolution in your cell phone camera. The camera resolution is really, really strong these days. That makes computer vision, in terms of the raw inputs, it gives it the ability to really do a good job of being repeatable and being precise. There's also really sort of notable enhancements in just the on-edge processing that can take place on a cell phone. And so our app works without a cloud trip required. You don't need network dependency. You're able to do, this functional movement assessment. You're able to tape an employee moving without having to rely on some cloud service somewhere giving you a score. And that's something that we feel really good about. How that solves a problem for our customers. There's a lot of folks out there that have done some video work in the past, and it just takes a long time for that to turn around and for them to get something that's actionable.
Yeah.
So in a scenario where like a frontline manager might be videotaping their employee doing something, we give them a result right away, and they can actually just show the employee or tell the employee how to maybe do something a little bit differently to help reduce those injury risks. So that's a big part of our product, that computer vision part. That's a big input. Mm-hmm. Then there's this sort of other big chunk of technology around recording. I'll call it more reactive data around the workforce. And I want to be careful about my use of the word reactive. It does not mean that an injury has taken place. Okay. Right. But what it does mean, this reactive data, is an employee might say that they're sore, might say something like, my knee hurts today. Right. We use the word complaint as sort of a way to quantify any engagement where an employee would be coming to someone in HR, maybe a service provider who's on site, maybe an on-site occupational health practitioner, and just mentioning that they're sick, right, or mentioning that they don't feel great, they're not 100%. So we have this documentation engine that allows us to track each of those engagements. There's actually there's a pretty sophisticated sort of set of data that you want to capture when that happens, because if you're not really going deep enough in the way you're capturing that data, you might not have the right way to sort of get that person back to 100%. You might not be capturing enough fidelity in your data to map the injury risk the right way in aggregate, which is important. And so we have this data management platform with a bunch of sophisticated inputs. It's built specifically for these scenarios where you might be on a construction job site, or you might be in a warehouse, right, where there isn't a whole lot of time. And so you have to have a really sort of intuitive user interface that allows you to get the right data very clearly from the employee in that engagement. And there's different kinds of engagements that we support. So one would be where an employee would be coming to an on-site, practitioner. Another would be the on-site practitioner is going out to an employee and more proactively engaging that employee and asking how you're feeling that day. And so we sort of map a bunch of these different inputs into our data management platform. And then we have the analysis, the output, right? So our data management platform, think of it as just like a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs. And the outputs allow a customer to map first of all, the outputs allow the customer to look at a specific employee and, look at how this person has felt over a body of time. If they've had some issues in the past, are they continuing to have those issues? And it just maps each time you're engaging with that specific employee. There's also the ability to map sort of in aggregate how the workforce is sort of looking in terms of engagements, right? In terms of, are they complaining about certain soreness in certain body parts? We would be mapping in their computer vision based body part related risk as well, to sort of look at across a shift or across a job family or across a specific facility or location. Is there injury risk that is notable, right? Notably high, notably low. It gives the employer or the customer the ability to really map out aggregate level musculoskeletal injury risk in a intuitive way. So there's a bunch of different sort of ways that I could expand on that, but I think sort of the best way to kind of define the system is there's these computer vision inputs. There's a bunch of then other inputs that we get from employees. And then these outputs are really sort of interesting in the way that they visualize the risk across a number of different variables that could be interesting to the customer.
Yeah, I think it's very comprehensive in that sense to be able to take a look at it from an assessment perspective, right? From the computer vision aspect of it, and then also taking in the vocal inputs too from the employees themselves, and then kind of being able to aggregate all that together and understand, what's happening over time and, trying to be preventative. But I guess even if something does happen too, then, you can start to understand like, oh, maybe this is why something happened, and you know better for the future. But I think it's very interesting to take that computer vision and apply it in that way because, from my experience, I mean, trying to teach people the proper lift method and things like that. I mean, there's certainly like fundamentals to it that you can demonstrate and show, and you can certainly see if somebody's, lifting with their back versus lifting with their knees, but being able to give that real kind of visualization into proper form and assessment, like right on the spot, and not just, seem like you're maybe nitpicking somebody about like the way they're moving or something, I think is really a great tool to have to be able to help to improve upon your workforce and help those employees understand too, like what's going on. Because I think that visualization really can drive that through to be able to do that. I'm curious, I mean, as you talk to people about this and you're talking about the computer vision aspect, especially, I'm curious, like, what's the reaction? I mean, I feel like from the employer's perspective, like it's going to be something that's definitely useful and something that would be well received. But I'm curious from like the employee perspective, is there any kind of resistance to being assessed in that way or understanding? Because you mentioned kind of, you can assess somebody and understand like, okay, like, they're more likely to get injured in this type of role than this type of role. Is there any kind of hesitation from the actual employees that are going through this assessment?
We'll be back after a quick break.
When it comes to systems, you want something that will start showing results fast. You're looking for a tool that can enable your 3PL or warehouse to get to the next level. So why wait? That's why Carton Cloud provides supported, fast onboarding that can have your WMS up and running in hours, not months. Jump into Carton Cloud's easy-to-use workflows for all of your services, including cross-docking, serialized inventory tracking, e-commerce order fulfillment, and more. This software is built by logistics people for logistics people, and those logistics people are standing by to help train you and support you so that you can be successful with your customer. With 24/7 real-time reporting and free online training, you need to check out Carton Cloud for your operation. Take the next step in your operation by heading to cartoncloud.com/free-demo or click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kevin. We have found that it's important to communicate this the right way to the employees. And the right way to communicate this service and this product is this is a tool that can help keep you healthy. Ultimately, nobody wants to get hurt.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose time. This is people's jobs and their livelihoods. They take it seriously. They're proud about the work that they're doing. And so when the communication is aligned to, this is sort of about keeping you healthy, it resonates well. And I have some experience just sort of personally back to, my sports days on this too. Like you go into a professional locker room, if there's a new technology there and there is some talk in the locker room around this is just going to be used by the front office to determine when I've hit my performance sort of peak and they're going to trade me or whatever, like you will have apprehension there for sure. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that. And I've also seen cases where, new technologies come in and it's just all been about improving your performance. And there's just been a much sort of more relatable tone to the way that the tech is communicated. Ultimately, we're not building a consumer product. We're building a product for a customer who is, either a service provider, or an employer themselves who, they have staff that cares about their workforce. So I think it starts for us, it starts there. Our customer cares about their workforce. They care about the health of their workforce. They want their employees to not get hurt. They want to understand why their employees are getting hurt. And we offer a tool that gives them more visibility than they had before to answering those questions. And we found that to be a message that resonates. As there's a sort of a diverse group of employees that represent, it's such a huge group. The industrial athlete is there's so many people there that represent it. A lot of those employees are, represented groups. They work in unions, right? And unions historically, there's been some questions around like, hey, what technology are you bringing in here? Again, I go back to it because I was in a union when I played in the NFL, and there would be some apprehension around anything that a player might be asked to wear. But ultimately, what we found, even with unions, as we've talked with unions, is there's a much more interested conversation to be had when this is about worker health. Mm. And that is truly what our product is about. It's why our company is named AMP Health. We are really focused on how to allow these industrial athletes to live happier, healthier lives.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's a great focus and mission too. And I love how you related it to your experience. As a professional athlete, I think it's very, very similar, right? It's, the same thing when, an employee is feeling like they're being, there's a new tool to evaluate their performance or something, I feel like, that could be a way for them to think too, is, just a way to, find a way to weed me out as a low performer or something and get rid of me in some way. And I love that you're taking the approach that this is to, help them and boost them and make their health a priority and make sure that they're in the best position that they can be to succeed and succeed in a healthy way. So I think that's a great thing. And now you mentioned kind of AMP Health in here as well. And I know the last time we had you guys on the podcast a while ago, it was just AMP, right? So you're going through a rebranding here to AMP Health and also launching your product. So talk to us a little bit about kind of this rebranding and what it means and kind of coming into the market with this fresh look.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about AMP Health as our brand and as our name. The company has been around for a little while, and we have built some products that have been focused on the sports segment and on the orthopedic segment. And so we have a few products that, are out there sort of in the hands of customers. We have some ortho customers that, that we love and who love using our product, but we, as a company, realized that the industrial athlete segment was just a little bit more broad as it relates to injury prevention. It's, AMP Health sort of gives us one, it sort of immediately resonates. We're a health company. It also, two, gives us sort of the ability to incorporate different data than what you might think. I mean, health is just such a broad sort of topic, right? And so,
Yeah.
there's things that we might do, right? There's, let's say, health kit integrations, right? So Apple Health Kit collects a lot of data on your health. And I'm not saying that we're doing this now, but in a future state, depending on who the customer is and what their interests are, we might want to integrate health kit data into our platform and use some predictive modeling to understand how the injury risk data that we get from our functional movement assessment, plus all the data that we're getting from the employees, plus all the health kit data, how does that help improve an injury risk model that can be sort of actionable for the customer? So we wanted to put ourselves in a position where we could sort of take a step back from specifically sort of focusing on a particular type of injury or even musculoskeletal injuries in general. It's where we're focused today. But as a company, we wanted to give ourselves the ability to incorporate more data and to potentially have more outputs and more service lines than we have today. So we're really excited about this rebranding. We're really excited about the ability that we have to reach a broad group of customers, and some of our solutions we feel are differentiated and can really help solve some of these customer problems right off the bat. So we're really pumped for the Amp Health rebrand here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes a ton of sense to push it in that direction and rebrand around just even the word health in general, because I think, health is just promoting just having that healthy worker from all aspects. And, I think we talked about today kind of the different aspects in where you're tracking things, where you're helping to identify potential issues or, preventative measures for the employee and also the employer as well. And just taking into account that overall health of, I think, kind of calls back to what you said before about, the health of one player is kind of the health of the team too, in a sense, right? So you're bringing together the healthiness of one player and making sure that that's extrapolated throughout the entire team and having that whole healthy core unit of a team to operate at peak performance, in this case in the warehouse, and getting all those orders out that we need to get out today, right? And I think that's really a great way to focus it and focus over on that overall health. So it's great to hear about the rebranding and very exciting stuff coming from you guys at Amp Health. And I think it's really a good focus to have something like this and to be able to now bring kind of tech into this space and apply it in that way to be able to really assist the employers and the managers, the supervisors on the floor, and helping their teams make the best decisions possible when it comes to a safety and a health aspect. So really appreciate you coming on here, Sam, and talking to us about this, and very exciting to hear that you've come on board at Amp Health and also the rebranding too. If people are listening and they're interested to learn more about Amp Health or see how, this can really improve their employees' lives, what's the best way to do that?
So definitely go to our website, amphealth.com, and please leave your information there. We have a way to record, your name, your email. We are very, reactive to folks who drop a line and who inquire about our product and our service, and would love to follow up with you that way. So yeah, go to amphealth.com, or you could even go to, LinkedIn, go to our LinkedIn corporate page, Amp Health. You can ping us there. You can tag us. We're pretty sensitive to, when those mentions happen. We want to make sure we're following up with folks quickly. So those would be the best ways to get in touch with us.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Sam, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us all about Amp Health today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from The New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.